Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to Reanimated. This is the podcast about all things zombie and undead, and apparently lycanthropic, because we're back with Werewolves again today or this week. My name is Stuart. I am one of your hosts in California, and joining me this time, actually for the first time, from the great state of Illinois, is my brother, mi hermano, Simon. Hello, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. I guess it's been something I've been a fan of the show for a while, and I was really looking forward to. Been waiting, eagerly waiting for my chance to get on and talk about this. I don't know if you remember this, but I was in the Walking Dead franchise fandom from season one, I've trudged that grim path, and
Wait,
looking forward to the start of a new Daryl Dixon, I believe
without,
tonight.
did you never leave? Did you never get off the ride?
I have not missed a single episode. It is to this day, it used to be appointment television for me, right? In an era where everything got recorded and you watch later, I would watch it when it was on. I really struggled with the last couple of seasons. I really struggled with The Ones Who Live, where it became just another thing on my DVR.
Oh,
So I
okay.
would kind of go back and forth between that and stuff that I considered more rewarding as a
What about
viewer.
Fear the Walking Dead?
It took this. I mean, honestly, kind of the journey, the roller coaster ride there was largely the same for me as was as the original show in the franchise. I loved the first couple of seasons, and then it just kind of it just became hard to watch. And the last season in particular, yeah, I think everything that happened in Houston and on was just odd to me.
Well, then you got more on it than me or HA because we stopped watching it after season, I don't know, seven or eight, before the
Really,
time jump and before all these, yeah, before Madison
the
Clark came
nukes.
back on the show.
Yeah, with her mystery breathing illness. Yeah, the whole thing. I know it felt like a self-serving. It almost became the Coleman Domingo show. Uh,
Yeah,
because
which
he was the
frankly
most
it kind of was in season one too.
truth. But it's interestingly how he evolved his character for being just punchable and douchey
Yeah.
to being punchable and douchey, and then but also a family man. Yeah, yes, I it almost drove me. Actually, honestly, to be honest, I almost stopped watching it when Cliff Crawford got killed. That was
Well,
when he got thrown out of the shopper. That
Cliff
was
Cliff Curtis, right?
Cliff Curtis. My bad. Cliff
I don't know.
Crawford being a baseball player, I think. Anyway,
Okay. But yeah, I agree. Travis Manala was a great character. He, yeah, I've been rewatching season one and I'm just actually starting season two right now too.
okay.
Because I had such fond memories of that show from the first two to three seasons, really, but with the original showrunner Dave Erickson, once he was replaced, I think the direction got janky to say the least.
Mm,
And Cliff Curtis as Travis was really he was one of those like moral compasses characters, but
hmm.
which are usually very short-lived. But actually, he made it to season what, two and a half, three.
It's about somewhere in season three, right?
So
Where
he actually got killed
he got
under
his
the
untimely demise.
he got killed under the original showrunner, but that's because he had to go do five more Avatar movies. Um. Anyway,
Well,
so yeah, I'm glad that you're a fan of the genre, not just the genre, but that franchise specifically, which has given us a lot to talk about. But do you remember your first zombie movie
worst one ever?
or the most
Oh
impactful?
gosh. Most impactful was the original Night of the Living Dead. Um, and then that whole I got really into that. Like, so I saw that, and that was just like the cinematic kind of grooviness of that film, and the litany of bad choices that every character makes as they choose to whether they want to, hide in the basement or the attic and all that kind of stuff. And then as that series evolved, right? So Dawn of the Dead, Day of the Dead, all those. Like I really got into all those. In fact, one of my favorite movies of the last 20 years was the reboot of the one where they all hang out in the shopping mall. Because I think there's some.
That's
It was
Dawn of the
like the
Dead.
first. Is that
Yeah.
Dawn of the Dead? Yeah. So with Sarah Polley and a few other
Oh,
few. Oh,
The Zack Snyder one. Yeah.
yeah. But it also had it had Phil Dunphy. Oh my gosh, I'm blanking on the actor's name.
Yeah. Phil
The
Dunphy
guy who
works
played
for me too.
there's the guy who plays Phil Dunphy's in that too. It was just a really it was a fun. That was a kind of, and it was the first one I felt like they managed to try to they struck a really good balance between comedic moments in an otherwise kind of desolate thing. It's one of the things I've always loved about the genre is the fall. the original. That's why I think maybe the first few episodes of Walking and Fear are were so impactful for me because you're seeing, especially Fear, society starting to come unglued, and the desperate attempts to kind of hold it together. So I feel like, um, in the kind of the in that context and having that kind of dramatic tension, and you kind of know there's an inevitability to it to sprinkle in a few comedic moments. So Phil Dunphy, taking out zombies in the parking lot with golf balls off the roof while he's having a martini, and it's just sort of like the idiocy or the it's not the word I'm looking for, but there's sort of just like a just kind of a foolishness, to the way people are kind of carrying on their lives.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, there's like a level of absurdity that gets injected into
absurdity is a great
things.
word. Thank you.
Uh, yeah, so nice. That's a good I mean that might be some of the highlights for a lot of people, but I also agree that 2004 Dawn of the Dead was probably one of well, I mean, I did see 28 Days Later in the theater also, but just remember going to the movies to see Dawn of the Dead and kind of being blown away. Uh, and Zack Snyder has continued to make, well, more mid-level zombie
Doesn't he? Yeah,
movies.
doesn't he? Doesn't have the greatest rep right now, does he? I mean, as far as like when I talk to a lot of the people that I work with, especially at Triton College, shout out Triton College, go Trojans. Are they're younger, a lot younger than me, right? They're 19 and 20, and a lot of them consider themselves movie buffs, and the name Zack Snyder is definitely a polarizing figure, in the movie fan community, I guess.
Oh, among this demo specifically, the 18, 19, some of
Among
them,
the younger folks,
they
yeah,
love or hate him.
is exactly right. Is one or the other. There's no middle ground with that fellow.
Well, I feel like that might be across all demographics for Zack Snyder. Like one of the, he has this like reputation for publishing director's cuts, with Justice League, etc. And then when he
Yep.
did that for Rebel Moon, which was objectively a hot pile of garbage, I was like, why would I watch this again? I mean, I see that you've added new characters and new storylines. Why would I subject myself to that a second time? I don't feel like that makes any
I
sense.
Raccoon was one of those movies that I watched. It was late. I might have, I was like sort of not ready to go to bed, on a weekend night, and I was like, "What is this?" And I got through it. I thought it was, yeah. I didn't. I guess at a certain point in your movie going evening, you're not really interested in artistic greatness or a good story without massive plot holes. Um, and so that ticked that box for me perfectly. It was that was an enjoyable thing. But yeah, I understand how it wasn't particularly well.
I'm glad that you were able to enjoy it as late as it might have been. But you know what? We're not just here to talk about Zack Snyder today. What
Mhm.
we are going to be talking about is actually a 2021 film called Werewolves Within, which is written by Mishna Wolf, formerly married to Mark Maron. I don't know if you knew that.
I
Uh,
didn't know that. So great.
and directed by Josh Rubin, um, who you might not have heard of. He's only done one or two movies, but he's a stand-up comic and like an improv guy. I think that
Okay.
that is kind of the calling card or central theme of this whole project is it's like a lot of comedians, it's a lot of
Mhm.
Upright Citizens Brigade alumni, and a lot of improv, which I love. I love the generally I tend to love projects where there's a lot of improv comedy or comedians involved, just because they bring more absurdity to things. And this movie has a lot of the jokes per second or whatever in this movie is like on sitcom levels in some scenes. It was difficult to like keep track of all the
I
jokes.
I can't agree with you more. And it really, from a watching experience, and I'm not like this, but from a watching experience, I felt like I was constantly having to change gears. Like, I mean, the opening title card is a quote from Mr. Rogers, but set to like this super creepy music, right? So it's like
Yeah.
they set you up for it nicely.
Yeah.
This is kind of going to be the way this movie goes. But I feel like, to your point, like certain scenes were just outright hilarity, and then it would kind of grind into a like, oh, we have to build tension again.
Right.
And I find myself, I've watched this movie all the way through twice and parts of it a third time because I found my attention drifting in the same spots both times I watched it. You know what I mean? So I'd have to go back and be like, oh wait, let me check that again. So
Oh.
because I was constantly having to shift gears, like from, Haha Town to whatever, like to the kind of building tension. So yeah.
Interesting. I only watched it the one time, so I don't. Maybe my attention did drift a little bit, but I don't remember specifically where. Uh, so let's talk a little bit about the cast and crew. Um, this is a movie based on a video game, and you get that impression because Ubisoft is their logo is
Yeah.
very early on in the title credits, and which kind of pricked my ears up. I had heard, I mean, I've heard of Werewolf the Social, the party game. I've never played it.
Hmm.
Um, and I'd never heard of the fact that Ubisoft had this game, Werewolves Within, which was like a VR game, maybe, or it looks like it's from an older generation.
Yeah, so 2016, I believe it's so that puts it in PlayStation 2, or PlayStation 3.
Did you ever
Um,
play that or
it was
the
set in and it
Social?
was set in medieval times. It had
Right,
I'm not really sure how much it actually had. Like it was based very loosely on I think the idea one of us is a werewolf and we have to figure out who.
right.
Um, like thanks, Knives Out. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah. So at the core of it, it's a murder mystery or a whodunit. But it's who to werewolf is kind of at the center of this. But I thought that was interesting. Like I'd never seen Ubisoft's logo in the beginning of a movie before. I guess they probably did one for Assassin's Creed, but nobody saw that, so it's fine. Are you familiar with their work in the video game industry?
You know what? I'd love to as a no, I'd love to say I was more familiar with it. Like, are they behind all the Tom Clancy stuff? Is that them? No, it's someone else. I don't know. Nope,
Oh,
I
it
don't know.
could be. They could with
I'm hunting.
like. Oh, okay. Uh, the stuff that I'm most familiar from them are these like open world games that they tend to do. Assassin's Creed, I already mentioned, which is where you're an assassin,
Mhm.
creeding, if you will, no, running around in different time periods, murdering
Yes.
quote unquote bad people. They also had done, yeah, they have done, yes,
Far
it's
Cry.
yeah, and they've done Ghost, those Tom Clancy open
Yeah, with Tom
world
Clancy. You're right. Yeah, I was right about
Ghost
that.
somethings. Yeah, you were right about that. But yeah, Ubisoft does interesting games. Their most recent one was Star Wars Outlaws, which kind of bombed, which is a bummer,
Mm.
especially since I bought it. It is pretty uninspiring as far as games go, although it's like a cool premise. You get to be a young Han Solo-esque character
Oh, cool.
in an open world. They tend to do a lot of those kinds of games. I think the like one of their calling cards these days is huge budget, and we'll see how far
What
it
happens?
goes. And it
Yeah.
sometimes it doesn't
Is
quite
it
go as far.
is it kind of like RP? Is it single your character is decided for you and you kind of wander through the world, or you're allowed to mod the
Yeah.
character at all as you set up?
In the ones I'm thinking of, you don't, there's no character generation. It's a
Okay.
story that it's kind of like a linear plot, but in an open
Yeah.
world
Okay.
is generally how they
And for
go.
for a hot second there, it reminded me of remember Traveler, the RPG set in space.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was like, oh, has it got Traveler vibes? But apparently not. Oh well.
I
Boom.
don't think it has Traveler vibes.
Lame.
Um, yeah, I know some people who still play Traveler on the
I
internet.
can see that. I
I
can see
haven't
that.
gotten into it, but I am tempted since Traveler, for those who don't know, is a tabletop role playing game. It's a science fiction setting where you can actually die during character creation, which is one of the cooler and less cool elements of that game system. Like you can just die of old age, I feel like, or you
Yeah.
die in military service.
And you can definitely die in military service. I recall that happening to me. And that game always seemed to end before it began for me because it just too hard to go places to do things. But whatever.
Well, you and I never, we were both obviously tabletop curious as children, and I just remember rolling up characters a lot, and that we never got
Yes.
past that.
A lot of
Uh,
role. It's okay. Can we just having my kids are a little bit older than yours, right? And the boys, Jamie and Bailey, still they play a lot of Xbox and PlayStation, and it doesn't matter which game we're playing. And I pretty much dabble exclusively in really in the sports games now, although I have been playing Hell Let Loose lately. But anyway, whatever game we're playing, any sport, they spend hours creating characters. It's the same. It's so interesting to me that element of the gaming world has fundamentally not changed. Like there's this like visceral joy in creating a character now, especially in UFC. They love creating fighters, and of course, they look outward. And it's just a really, it's so interesting to me that that still holds as like one of the key kind of engagement things that people get into.
Yeah, Avatar creation is like the heart of the escapism, maybe. I don't know.
No,
It's cool. It's fun to do. I agree. Uh,
that's
however,
the movie.
back to the movie. So, Josh Rubin is the director. This is his second film, and he is as I've mentioned, he's also a comedian and a writer, and he's regularly featured on a network called Dropout TV. Have you ever heard of this?
I have not heard of that, but I'm looking at him now. I'm looking at his IMD. I'm looking at the IMD or the Rotten Tomatoes, and I know where I've seen this guy. Like I was like, look, where have I seen this guy? He's on his TikTok like interview series. I can't remember the name of it. I think it might be Dropout TV,
Yeah, it
where
probably is.
the host asks him. He's like, they asked him to deliver a line. So it's like,
Yeah,
hey, the iconic line from Scarface, but as if you were in third grade, and he's like,
yeah.
ah,
This that's a
and they go
show
through and they have a
called
panel.
that's a show called Make Some Noise on Dropout. Dropout
Oh,
is kind of a offshoot from College Humor. Sam Reich
okay.
is the I don't know, the head of Dropout. And then they have just a huge cadre of, again, it's all these stand-up and improv comedians and people who can make weird noises, frankly, who go on game shows and compete for fake prizes to just make funny answers to
Yeah.
things. And so there's a lot of clips out there of Josh Rubin making silly noises. He's famous for his seagulls and I don't know,
Oh,
impressions of 10,000 Batmen. Um, so that's kind of where I know him from before this. I was like, suddenly he's directing a movie, and it kind of took me a little bit by surprise.
yeah.
So Josh Rubin, heck of a guy, and not a bad
Certainly.
director, I think.
Yeah, no, I agree. I thought you know what? I think with the exception of that throttle up, throttle down thing that I
Yeah,
apparently was too attuned to, um, I thought, yeah, it's I think the shots were well executed. I'm not, it was just I think he did a nice job of painting the story, on the screen, which was really cool. It was fun to watch.
yeah, cool. Uh, and then the cast is large, and you get introduced to them all really fast.
Yeah.
That was actually part of like the fatigue that I had watching this early on was like, how am I going to keep up writing keep with my notes when they introduce another character every 15 seconds? Because that happens quite quickly. But the first thing that happens obviously is that Mr. Rogers quote, which did have me laughing out loud just from the credits, which is a cool place to start with a movie.
Yeah.
Um, well, I guess it's before, and there's a cold open where Dave gets murdered in the woods.
Right.
From
Yeah.
this scene, I was convinced there were multiple werewolves.
Oh, interesting.
I don't know. It seemed like because I rewound here like 4 or 5 times to watch this scene where he sees something in the woods or where something stands
Hmm.
up in the background. I could have sworn there were
Yeah.
two things that moved.
Whoa.
Um, I thought that was for a split second scene, I thought it was pretty cool. That's why I watched it like 10 times. But
Okay.
it sure looked like there were multiple werewolves. So, or multiple figures in the woods, because I also wasn't convinced that there was a werewolf in this movie until, spoiler alert, there was.
Oh, yeah. It's so interesting because I feel like so they start with that jump scare, right? Like in the beginning in the cold open,
Yeah.
they get you right there. But
Wait, before you go in, what did that
yeah.
scene remind you of? The acting of the guy playing Dave, the way he's flailing around. Did that trigger a
Oh,
memory for you?
oh dear. No, why? Was it supposed to?
To me, it looked just like the death scene in Jabberwocky from the beginning of that film, where the guy gets eaten by the Jabberwocky.
Oh my goodness. Oh
Is
no.
that
Okay.
is
No,
that a
that's I
Terry?
did not.
It's like who did Jabberwocky? It was like some of the guys from Monty Python, right?
Okay. Yeah. Though you got me. I don't know.
Okay. Well,
I
there's
could
a
give you some Jabberwocky, but I do not know the show. I have not seen the motion picture or short sketch
Oh,
or
I could
whatever it
have
is.
sworn that you had seen it. Okay, it doesn't matter. So sorry, that's a red herring. But there's a lot of flailing around of the torso in that film too, and this just tickled me that they were, I didn't know if it was an homage. It probably isn't, because I don't know how many people have even seen Jabberwocky. Apparently not you.
Okay, so
But
now the more esoteric the reference, the more likely it is that that is an homage to his favorite movie as a child or some nonsense, right? I mean,
maybe
absolutely. Josh, I bet if you go back through his Twitter, he'll or his X, you'll see his love of Jabberwocky loud and proud, guaranteed.
we don't have to call it X here. It's okay.
Whatever.
Yeah. Sorry, I did interrupt you. So you were talking about this cold open and the
And I
this
just thought
jump
it was
scare.
okay. So yeah, so like okay, person in woods not really paying attention because they've got their texting with somebody or whatever, and you see like that. It's like that snap cut, jump here, eyes here, eyes here, eyes here, and it's like sets up. It's like oh, something bad's gonna happen. I felt like it was a really. Um, I think if you look at the cast of this movie, you're like this is just straight up going to be funny, right?
Right. Yeah.
Especially the kind of the lead kind of lead players. And so to establish, and then with the Mister Rogers quote set to the kind of the horror, the kind of tension building music, then you're sort of like, okay, so this is going to be kind of funny, and then they jump right into straight up like old school. It's a trope, right? It's like, oh look, I'm surrounded, but I don't know where this thing's coming from, and all of a sudden it's got me, and I'm dying.
I really like the way that he delivered
Um,
the line "hello." Also, when he's he just delivers it in a funny way. But yes, it is supposed to be a horrific scene. We also get a fair amount of exposition from this because he's taking off his wedding ring. He's looking furtively behind him at the house where he's come
mhm.
from. So we know that this guy's having a tryst or something. Although did we ever find out who he was cheating with? No.
No, I don't
Maybe
think.
she went
I
to.
think if I recall correctly, it was actually it was the werewolf,
Okay, could
but
have
they weren't
been.
actually. He was. It was in the setup. They were pre Tristy. They hadn't actually. Nothing had been done yet. It was Cecily was luring him out.
Yeah.
But honestly, come on. If you're gonna have an extramarital affair and you have a special text message tone, it's not the wolf whistle.
Yeah. With your flip phone.
Yeah,
But this guy, he's dead pretty fast. We don't really know who he is until later. But yeah, he gets eaten. And then
yeah.
we jump into the next scene, which which is Sam Richardson is introduced here, and he's the hero. He's playing Finn Wheeler, and he is in his car and he's listening to I don't know a podcast or an Audible book on self. It's like a self-help book about masculinity. What was your? Did you have a take
I
here?
love. Okay, so just pause for a second on Sam Richardson. I don't know if you ever watched Detroiters. I think it was on Comedy Central, which is him and another, I can't remember the other guy's name, but they were like two ad men in Detroit, like trying to save a failing ad business. It's absolutely hilarious. They're just brilliant. And then most recently, obviously him and Ted Lasso as the very unlikable Nigerian oil magnate.
Yeah.
So I think this guy's just hilarious. Like wherever he is, I'm going to take time for it. The scene was, I mean, just to cut in on him screaming out loud,
Yeah, you go
just
straight from the
absolutely like
Jabberwocky death scene to him screaming, but just like because of this
but then
podcast
it's
he's
like the
listening.
voice like you are him, yeah, you are. It just I thought that was and it I love that it sets him up as yeah, it kind of it already you already pitching him as an anti-hero, right? Because he's not the he doesn't fit all the traditional molds of what a hero should be.
Right.
He's right there working on himself right out of the gate.
Yeah, heroes
You
don't
know
need to work on their masculinity. Right, yeah.
he's a gentle soul, and especially when he leaves that absolutely cringy voicemail for his ex-girlfriend, I guess. Yeah,
Yeah. I
absolutely.
think I first got to know Sam Richardson's work from mostly from the After Party, where he's the lead in a ensemble like it's another whodunnit. It's him,
Hmm.
Tiffany Haddish, and a whole bunch of other people. There were two seasons, and each season has like a million A-listers. And Ike Barinholtz was in the first season, which was partially
Oh, okay.
why I caught it. And then he went on to do another season. Anyway, it's a really funny show, and he's done a ton of other really funny things. Oh, he was yeah. You mentioned Ted Lasso. I'm trying to think of any films that I've seen him in. the Tomorrow War, he was kind of the comic relief next to Chris Pratt, which is funny because Chris Pratt
Oh, that's right.
generally doesn't. I mean, the thing is, he does serious movies, and then he needs somebody to be funny.
It's kind of wild that they actually have to. I want you have to think about the process for that. Yeah, I was still. What does he talk? He refers to J.K. Simmons as conspiracy Santa.
Yeah. That's actually, yeah, there are some funny scenes in that film. None of them are Chris Pratt. I don't think he's funny at all in that movie, which is, yeah, like I said, weird.
Yeah, that's true.
Okay, but yeah, so Sam Richardson is awesome. So right away, I think we're predisposed to enjoy scenes that he's in. Also, that's just kind of his thing. He's ridiculously likable. So all the more interesting that he did that turn on Ted Lasso, where he was very unlikable and
Hmm.
did a good job with that character too. So this is Finn Wheeler, and he's driving and he's listening to this podcast about how he needs to work on his masculinity, or that he's fine. He's masculine enough as it is. Uh, Screaming and then pulling up to the Beaverfield Inn, which is with all of his stuff, and he's moving in. The first people he talks, then we already start meeting people, like an insane amount of people, if you ask me. We meet three people in this first scene. It's Sam Parker. Is that his last name? Yeah.
Yeah, the oil. Yeah, Sam Parker, the
He's
oil,
the
the
gas
oil
man.
guy.
Yeah,
Yep, the
we've
gas
we've
man. Sorry.
driven through town and seen his weird eternal flame phallic statue.
Yep.
We meet Janine, the innkeeper, who is talking to Sam about not wanting to, or listening to Sam mansplain to her about this project that he's trying to put in town. And we've already met Milano Weintraub. I don't know how you say her last name.
That sounds perfect.
Okay.
Bet it's
Who
Weintraub.
is
But yeah,
Yeah, who is playing Cecily, the male person, who doesn't get involved right away in this scene, but then when she does, it's almost like she was listening to what was going on before she decided how to approach Sam.
I
Sam.
thought that was I thought that was a really interesting way to introduce her character, if for no other reason than because how friendly she becomes so quickly right after
Yeah,
that.
right.
Like it's almost like she's busy reading Walden and she doesn't have time for him and she just points, right? You
Yep.
don't even really see her face.
Yep.
Anyway, so yeah, that was I thought that was a yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Uh, so it becomes maybe clear on the second watch that she was trying to get his temperature. We hear about this environmentalist who's staying at the inn. Uh, Cecily is the male person, and she helps out Finn getting upstairs, and then gives him a letter, which sends him out on his first quest right away. And then they're like, "Oh, I'm going that way too. Let me go with you." And so they walk out to uh, Emerson Flint's cabin, who has a commercial trapping operation. Apparently, this is on Dr. Ellis's radar. This character of Flint is there to like kind of confuse the plot a little bit because for a lot of the film, he's the villain because he is legitimately a scary dude, but he has like nothing to do with any of the other drama that's going on in this film. With
I
the
feel like
pipe, you know, yeah. Is that what's your
yeah.
take?
I feel like this is just like a kind of classic, like gruff old man living up the hill who turns out to be a hero. Like nobody wants to, he's scary, he's a loner, he lives out in the woods. I honestly like I the second we met him, in the first time I watched it, I was like, this guy's gonna come back around and do something cool in the end. Definitely gonna happen. I just feel I think I sussed out that this was an uncomplicated movie pretty quickly. Um, and then got really confused in the middle third.
Yeah. I mean, before we even get to meet Flint, they walk through town and meet literally everybody else in the movie. And that's the scene where I was like, oh my God, I have to pause because the first thing they do is walk past Joaquin and Devin's house where they're like doing yoga or something.
Yeah.
Here, Joaquin is being played by Harvey Guillen, who is maybe most famous for What We Do in the Shadows, the TV series. I
Yeah,
don't know
yeah.
if yeah.
I have seen it. Yeah, I watched that. Another show that was kind of not appointment TV, but definitely a hoot.
He
More
and I
for Matt
mean,
Berry than for anything else. But yeah,
oh yeah, Matt Berry's fantastic. So Harvey is also was also recently on an episode of a show on Dropout, with Milana Weintraub, and they both name
Yep.
dropped this movie. And so which was partially why I was like, yeah, I should see it. And what about Milana? Do you know about her?
She looks so familiar to me.
Yeah.
Like I've seen her in other things. I feel like, I mean, generally speaking, when you do an ensemble cast, right, you staple together a bunch of people who have like good facial recognition, or so for yeah. So like Sam Richardson, Milana, the guy who plays Marcus, Michaela Watkins, like you said, and Harvey Gann, they're all comedians, right? So
Yeah.
they kind of pal around together. I used to refer to this as the Band of Brothers effect. Like once Band of Brothers dropped,
Yeah.
everything that one of those guys did, and everything that one of the Easy Company guys did, there ended up being at least one or two other Easy Company guys in it, even if it was a detective show set in Los Angeles in the
Yeah.
in the 2000s. Like
I
Donnie
I don't I
Wahlberg's there, and all of a sudden, like, oh, here's Bill Garnier, and blah blah blah. Like it is
yeah.
so.
Percante
I
is
feel
on the first episode of the new Penguin show, but I don't know that there was another guy
I think
from
it's worn off now. I
Band
think
of Brothers.
once Damian Lewis ascended to superstardom, the effect was broken. It's
He's got a
magic.
vampire movie coming out. We're going to be talking about pretty exciting. Yeah, Percante looks like a very different version of himself. That's not obviously the actor's name either. He's
Well,
just
how
like an
long
older
ago was
guy.
that? But how Band of Brothers is how that's
2001.
yeah, wow,
It came out like
gosh,
9/11,
that's crazy.
which was wild. Yeah. Uh,
Anyway,
so Milana Weintraub has done a lot of At Midnight, some which I think you really enjoyed that stand up. It was
yes,
basically a stand up show. When it was hosted by Chris Hardwick, she was on a couple episodes.
right, okay.
And then she's done a lot of voice work for video games, not a whole bunch of, not a lot of movies.
Huh,
So this was one of like, less than a dozen films she's done.
that's wild. I could have sworn I've seen her places before, but I
She's
guess
on TV all the time in AT&T commercials, which is where you probably see her.
oh, is that who she is?
Yeah.
Oh, dang. Okay. Yeah, that makes total sense. Now because those are on TV all the time too. Oh, thank
Yep.
you for that. Oh, today I
There
learned. This
you
has been a
go.
valuable experience for me already.
There you go. The people who become the face of a brand, I think they don't really need to do a lot, go out and do films or TV
She's Lily.
because
Ah,
they can they can make a decent living. So you said you recognize Marcus. This guy I've never seen before, George Basil.
George Basil. Yeah. So there was a show. It was like a send up of Lost. And it has Griff, what's his name? From uh oh gosh, from Flight of the Conchords, the guy who plays their manager.
Okay.
So it was a send up of Lost, and it was just like it was literally. I mean, it was literally plane crash island, massive dysfunction and silliness, and it was equal parts like it was Lost, it was Lord of the Flies, and it was that horrible movie with James Franco and every other person that said about the end of the world.
Oh yeah, that
Um,
is a horrible movie. This
yeah,
is the
right.
end.
Just so under delivered on every level. But anyway, so it's kind of like that kind of silliness and nonsense, but also like they literally they try to parallel Lost, and so I remember him from that because he was like one of the least likable characters.
So this is
Um,
Wrecked, is what you're describing. I see Restar Me
oh, is
is in
that
it.
it? Yeah, maybe that's it. Yeah, it
Yeah.
was like on TBS or something, right? It was like a
Yeah, TBS.
you're so quick on the research keys. I love that.
It's a parody. Well, it's just in his filmography. It's a parody. It is a parody of Lost.
There we go.
Funny that they thought they could make an entire maybe they were only thought they would do. They did 3 seasons.
Yeah, it
That's
was it was bananas. I mean, it was so silly.
I might watch
So
a
so silly.
parody of Lost because just like a hate what like I just like Lost a lot. Anyway, so yeah, I thought this guy did a great job as Marcus. Marcus and Gwen are a couple who are just like the chaos people. They're insane. I like the way that Milana sets up their scene too by uh her responses to Gwen, who is being accusatory about like her hiding mail or not delivering mail that she's expecting, and then Marcus rolls up and they just seem like tweakers, which is fine.
Hmm.
And then but Cecily is saying to Finn, "Oh, you're gonna want to see how this keeps going." And it does just like everybody's insane in this town, and that's
Yeah.
part of what Cecily is telling Finn too as they're walking through it. She seems to like Joaquin and Devin. She says we're friends, even though they closed the curtains in her face. But everybody else is certifiable. After we meet Gwen, And Gwen is another. The woman who plays Gwen is another Upright Citizens Brigade alum. What's her name? Sarah Burns. I couldn't tell you that I've seen her in a lot of stuff, but she does look kind of familiar. I would say I'd never seen George Basil or Basil before.
Okay.
Uh, and then the next two people they meet are Michael Chernis, who has been in a lot of comedy stuff as Pete Anderton, and his wife Trisha Anderton, played by Michaela Watkins. Michaela Watkins, I don't think I know, but Pete Chernis I've
Okay.
seen in a lot of stuff.
I'm,
Usually
I'm gonna
playing
I'm gonna
like a lovable loser sort of character.
I'm gonna go opposite to you on that. I've seen Michaela Watkins in a bunch of things, TV
Interesting.
shows mostly. I want to say she was in The Unicorn. Um, Let me see. I'm scrolling through her TV credits. I think she was in The Unicorn, which was yeah, she was. She was Delia. Okay, so which was oh God, the guy with the funny name. He's the guy with the funny, basically about a widower who's in his 30s and he has two daughters, and it's like the family that rallies around him to help, blah blah blah. But she plays not Michaela Watkins plays a character not unlike her character
Uh,
this one who's just a little bit sharp. Not quite as kind of comically silly as in the show, but I'd never seen Pete Chernis before. So
Never.
yeah,
Interesting.
never. Mm-hmm. Or
He
say
I'm
Michael
trying.
Chernis.
Yeah, Pete, Michael, I'm sure he goes by both. I'm trying to think of what would be something you will have seen him in. What's something that I've seen him in? Why do I know him?
I'm just looking through his. Oh, he was in Elementary. Um,
Born Legacy.
uh, yeah. Captain Phillips. Might have
Yep.
seen him in that. I feel like I don't know. He's one of
Spider-Man
those. He's got
Homecoming. So if you've seen your Spider-Man movies, you've seen him.
yeah. No,
Yeah. Yeah, it's weird.
none of these are films or TV shows that I have been particularly
I'm not
into. So
immediately picking out where I know him from either, but I know I've seen him in a bunch of stuff. So it's weird. Not sure why, yeah, weird. Okay. There's more than a couple of people who also are alumni from Drunk History, which also is a show that assembled a lot of great improv skill. So Michaela playing Trish, Michaela Watkins was on there. So was Sarah Burns as Gwen, not as Gwen, but did you ever see Drunk History?
I did. I love that show.
Yeah, that was pretty good. So then we meet those two. They are they're pro gas pipeline. So are Gwen and Marcus, but Gwen and Marcus don't really have their act together. Pete is a creeper, and Michaela gives Finn a white-skinned soap doll of himself, which is weird. And she has a little dog named Chachi.
That's right.
And then they move on to the cabin. Cecily
Cecily.
convinces Finn to go up to the cabin to deliver this package, where he's still talking or getting a phone call from his ex-girlfriend. So he's also got this subplot about his relationship with Charlotte.
Mm.
There's not a whole lot else other than he does get confronted by a man with a gun, runs away,
Delivers the package though.
delivers the package. Cecily says, "Oh, like you're overwrought. Let's go look at something cool." Takes him to an arcade slash axe throwing place, which is Chekhov's throwing axes. Which I was almost like, where did those go? They didn't come back, but they do eventually. They're going to. And we also have the first time we hear "I Saw the Sign" by Ace of Base,
Yes.
which is
I had a
also,
question.
oh, go for it.
A question on that one. So he says, I'm going to put something on. He's scanning through. Does he pick that intentionally or does he just press random numbers and letters?
I think he
It
picks it.
almost looks random.
Oh, I guess I didn't go back and watch that scene, but I thought
Hmm.
he picked it.
He's kind of going a lot of 90s. He's saying there, he's flipping through the discs as one does in those old,
Yeah.
CD driven jukeboxes. It's like a lot of 90s, a lot of 90s. Oh, I'm just going to pick something. And then they cut right to him pressing numbers. And I just figured, I don't know. Part of me was sort of like, wouldn't it be kind of cutesy if he had actually just randomly chosen the greatest foreshadowing song of all time?
It is a good foreshadowing song. It also features Cecily, who has shed all of her bulky layers is suddenly in a tank top and doing a suggestive dance. Um, yeah, if you're a reasonable person, how closely they start talking and interacting in this scene, it's all unlikely, but you know,
It feels fast.
it does feel fast. Poor Finn, but also, it is good for him that he doesn't try to seal the deal. Well, he does. No, he doesn't try to seal the deal with Cecily in this scene. Although coming on pretty strong, because he gets another phone call from Charlotte, and Cecily leaves in a huff. And you might be thinking, "What are
Oh,
you doing, man?" She's great,
understandable.
but as she says at the end of the film, probably a little too good to be true.
I can't you skipped over my favorite. I know we're not breaking this down moment shot by shot, but my
What is it?
favorite where he's talking to her and he's using his hands while he's holding kombucha. And you just
Oh.
know the com just like I'm watching it, I'm like, that kombucha is gonna go everywhere. That kombucha is gonna go everywhere. And then he did, and the kombucha went everywhere, and I was so happy. That was so satisfying to me. It was
And she
just like
says, "First time, your first kombucha." Yeah.
first kombucha. I just thought it was really funny that he was like, it was so obvious what was gonna happen, and yet the director or whatever, whoever decided to, they just like, yeah, we're just going to pull this one through. This is like so obvious. We're building to this thing over a period of like 15, 30 seconds. And then it's just going to happen. I don't know. It's like I think maybe that's like another thing I've thought about from this movie is like, they don't shy away from the obvious. They don't try to be subtle or twee. It's just like, these obvious little moments or obvious big moments are about to happen. Um, and they do, and then they do, and you're like, as a watcher, you're like, oh, that was nice. Like, I feel good about my ability to predict things here.
That's good. I don't think I'd noticed the that he had kombucha in his hands, but it was still a funny moment. What from this scene, we cut to the night, where Trish is sending her dog out to do its business. Um, and there's some, like, scary things going on outside. Chachi's leash comes back inside, torn, and Cecily, it's kind of another funny sort of scream cut where she's screaming when she's, maybe you think she's seen something outside, but actually I think she just was screaming because she's overwrought. And the
Mm,
cut to next morning, and she's still screaming, and now she's in the lobby of the inn, waking everybody up. And Devin and Joaquim are in there because they also heard the screaming. And I think everybody pretty much piles into the inn in short order here because this is our
yep,
ensemble and they're all going to be together now that some kind of nefarious business has been done. Because and actually the nefarious business is quite widespread because shortly after this, and stop me if I'm going too far too fast, Simon, but
no, I'm here. I'm just yeah, I'm waiting for a moment. Go for it.
Finn goes out and then starts looking at generators and they're all torn up. And then he finds Dave under the porch. And so the
What's
the
left? What's
stakes,
left of Dave?
yeah, Dave, there's still a fair amount of him, but not in good shape. So the stakes have suddenly gone from Chachi is missing and maybe there was malfeasance to no, Dave's definitely been, murdered and buried under the porch and all the power's out. And Gwen and Marcus roll in saying that the roads are fucked. Oh no, snow fucked.
Storm fucked.
Storm fucked? Yeah.
Storm fucked. The roads are storm fucked.
Yep.
It's also this is it, you didn't mention that is this not also the scene where we finally get to meet the mysterious environmentalist, Dr.
Yeah.
Ellis?
Because she just shows up behind Sam on
She's
the
pops
stairs.
up. Yeah,
This actor, Rebecca Henderson, I'd never seen her in anything until this year.
same.
And now she is like the attorney general in Inventing Anna. So that was actually in 2022, but I only watched it this year. So
Mm.
she's the not the attorney general, she's the ADA, the assistant district attorney in New York, who like goes through prosecuting Anna Delvey. I don't know if you're familiar with that story. Uh,
Nope.
and then she was the Jedi, like the head of the Jedi Council in the Acolyte. She's green and bald in that role.
Ah, her credit here says unknown character
In what?
on Rotten Tomatoes for The Acolyte.
Huh. Somebody didn't
Interesting.
couldn't figure that one out. But obviously she's done a lot. She's done Orange is the New Black, Westworld, Russian Doll, which I've never seen, The Good Wife. She's been in like a couple dozen movies.
That's interesting. She shares a lot of her filmography with Chernus.
Uh-huh.
They have a lot of they've have they see there's the effect. I'm telling you, it's real. But yeah, they've have a lot of credits in common in terms of shows.
Well, it was just weird that she kind of like popped up and now I see her everywhere. Um, and it's good to see her here. She does a good turn as this like super weird and creepy environmental professor who doesn't like to be touched, but loves to just pop up and take photos and hair samples from things.
Hmm. And she has a full-on lab rolling in her hotel room.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's the first person who I'm like, she was the first person I was like, ooh, is it her? Like she was the first one I was legit. She was they did a nice job of sort of keeping her character in the shadow a lot, right? So it's sort of like, oh, it's she's I don't know. Even though she didn't have the motive, but it was she was the first one I was kind of it's like kind of cocked an eye at, like, oh, is this our werewolf?
Yeah, because she's weird. She's just weird enough. But then
Hmm.
also she's one of the first ensemble members to die, so that that probably derailed your
It
suspicions at
derailed
that
my
point.
theory very quickly. Yes, yes.
So we get to this point in the film and now the Marcus is already talking about werewolves. They start this discussion pretty quickly. Mostly because from him it's like, oh, you're an insane tweaker. But there's also like a painting or a drawing in their house, which is apparently a version of another famous werewolf drawing from back in the day
Oh,
that Gwen thinks is super rad. The werewolf concept comes up very early, and we're as the audience inclined to think about that or believe it because the name of the movie is Werewolves Within and the claw marks in the generators. But there's this trope, or yeah, it's a trope in horror where that you in a world where there are zombies, usually people don't know what zombies are, etc. Here we are flipping that on its head, and they're jumping to that conclusion first, at least in Marcus's case.
yeah. I always everything that came out of his mouth except for the one my one favorite scene with him, which we haven't got to yet. I sort of wrote a lot of it off. He did, like you said, he seems like a tweaker. He did just seemed a little bit like off the he wasn't he never found the plot in order to lose it, So
Right. Um, yeah, yeah. I mean, his death scene and his wife's death scene are just kind of incredible.
hmm.
Just to underscore all that. There's a lot of hanging out in the inn at this point, and I like. There's just a lot of dialogue. It goes fast. There's a lot of discussion, a lot of jokes.
Yeah.
Ellis is upstairs doing lab things. Downstairs, Janine is distraught because her husband's dead body has been found. She might have spread the rumor that he went to Belize, which is why she enters into suspicion. They think that maybe she killed her husband and is the werewolf, or just killed her husband because he was cheating on her, which is like well known. We've
Hmm.
also, through these discussions, found out that in earlier discussions too, that Pete Anderton cheated on his wife Trisha with Gwen in the sugaring room in their house. And I'm not sure what a sugaring room is. I had to play that line back several times too to be like, what is she saying? Uh, and Pete is constantly trying to touch people who don't want to be touched.
Yeah, there was yeah, he had that creepy vibe for sure.
Who else is under suspicion? It turns out I'm trying to think. I guess nobody else really. Um, Sam Parker is just kind of a jerk. Devin and Joaquim are mildly jerky, but also are environmentally conscious and are opposing the gas pipeline. So, also in the room, in addition to the murder mystery discussions, is a lot of this like, I want the gas pipeline, I don't, which goes to motive for the murders, I
Right.
guess.
It could, yeah. Like trying to, yes, yeah, get that.
Cecily and Finn go back to Flint's cabin to enlist his help in trapping the killer slash werewolf. I think they're even
Right.
calling it a werewolf at this point
At that point they were, yeah.
because they found hair samples on both Chachi's collar and on Dave that match that Ellis is saying are a hybrid animal wolf or something.
So they haven't found Chachi's collar yet.
Right. No, but it was on the leash. It was on the broken leash.
Oh, okay, we're going to leave. Okay. Okay.
But at Emerson's cabin, Cecily finds the collar, and then they both decide to get out of there because they're convinced that Emerson is the killer. There's a funny scene of them trying to get out the door, and he just reaches over and unlocks it for them, and then they run away. They've got Sam Richardson. I don't know if he has bad chemistry in anything ever with anybody, but he and Milana Weintraub have great chemistry together.
Yeah, I think they're yes, they just sort of it's light and bouncy, even in not so funny moments, they sort of their delivery just really helps like keep energy in the scenes. Um and his, he is I think actually both. I was just thinking about like facial expressions and reactions to lines as delivered or reactions to moments. They just both do a really nice job. Like it's very clear where they're at.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was the fact they went back up to Finn's cabin at all was hilarious. Given their first experience. So
Yeah, the fact that they get in there and like are sitting down in his living room too. Yeah,
yeah.
that's fine. I forget how they talked their way in there, but they did, and it well worked out.
Sometimes the gruff old man up the hill isn't a bad guy.
Yep. Yeah, and by the end, he's
Almost never.
definitely not. They have a meeting back at the house. Everybody's packing.
That's
Almost
my
everybody.
favorite scene.
Finn asks, "Who's packing?" And then a whole bunch of people pull their guns out and say America or whatever. And Trisha remembers her purse gun, but and keeps referring to it as not a real gun. It's just a purse gun. So I think that leaves just Cecily and Joaquin and Devin without guns, perhaps, because Janine has a rifle. Gwen and Marcus both have guns. Pete and Trisha both have guns. And I think Finn has a revolver. Is that part of his Ranger stuff?
Where that came from because he shouldn't, right? I mean, that doesn't make. I think it was
Some
just.
Rangers do
I know
carry
at one point they
guns.
throw all the guns in a blanket,
Yeah.
I think they redistribute the weapons, but yeah, that's yeah, I believe if I recall, like he didn't start with one, and neither did Cecily.
No.
Um,
But he's that
but I
night he's
think
sleeping with a revolver in his hand.
he's got it tucked up in his hand. Yeah, I
Yeah.
saw that. Yeah,
So,
so yeah,
because this night, after they have this discussion about the guns, they're like, everybody is going to sleep in a room with somebody else with a gun. It's a sleepover with guns. And I don't know that they didn't really show how that worked out. It doesn't really matter because we cut to Pete and Trisha's bedroom, and Pete gets dragged out of bed, and his hand gets eaten off, and Gwen shoots him and shoots down the hallway at the creature that's biting off his hand, I guess. Uh, I don't know why this is funny to me. It is funny that Gwen shoots. Nobody makes a big deal about it really either. The fact that she shoots him in the chest, and
it almost
eventually,
yeah, it's almost like an offhand, right? Like
I think that's what
and you've
kills
been
him too.
shot,
It's not like the hand being bitten off is what kills him. He basically eventually dies.
just bleeds out.
Either he bleeds out, or I think he's been shot in the chest. Like he's probably got internal bleeding, like lung damage. It's pretty funny. And they give him a bunch of drugs. I don't know if this is this one of the scenes that you liked about Marcus, but they have all this hydrocodone or codone on the table next to Pete, and Marcus is like licking his lips, looking at it.
I enjoyed every moment of his character, to be honest. I mean, again, it was one of those things like it wasn't particularly complicated or hard to predict what he was going to do.
Yeah,
He was a pretty straightforward guy, except until later when he does something wildly unpredictable, which I thought was hilarious.
that's true. Uh, so they go back to try and interact with Ellis, who hasn't been part of any of their meetings, and she has been drinking. I guess she must have come out of her room at some point. She took Sam's flask. She's drinking. She locked herself in her room. She starts shooting through the door because she decides that it could be anybody in the house. They because the house was locked up when this attack
Right.
happened. Sam very predictably, I think, sneaks into her room and shoots her. Or at least, I think that's what happens. He says she shot herself. We don't really ever find out what happened there,
Yeah.
which is kind of weird. Uh, and then they decide to get rid of all the guns after that, I want to say. Does that check out?
Did he get rid of all the guns? Oh, that's when he collects them all.
They put them all in their
Yeah.
blanket
Okay.
and throw them outside.
Yeah.
Then they,
Yeah.
Finn gives this like kumbaya speech about togetherness and being good neighbors, and everybody everybody leaves and goes back into the woods except for him, Cecily, and Janine. Ellis is
Yeah.
dead upstairs. Dave's dead on the porch.
Yeah, because so Sam's going off to hunt, right? He's like getting tooled up to go on the hunt. And I think
Well,
Joaquin
yeah,
and Devin were going home.
they're trying to just get home. They're
Yeah.
taking a long time to get home because I'm pretty sure Trish gets home and then decides to go out and basically chases them down.
Yeah.
Her motive for doing that, probably just that she's crazy.
Yeah, I think this was the part of the movie. This was one of those parts where I was sort of finding myself drifting a little bit.
Yeah,
Um, right after the inspiring Kumbaya speech. Uh, but then this is also, as I upon reflection, as I've been kind of thinking about it over the last couple of days, this is also the part of the movie where I'm starting to like think about the title. And I'm like, oh, the
right.
werewolves within. Like
Yeah,
maybe there isn't a werewolf.
yeah,
Maybe it's
same.
just that we're all batshit crazy bad people.
Yeah.
And yeah, so that was sort of like I think second viewing, I started to kind of like think about that a little
Because
more
the
hard.
two murders we've seen, or suspected murders, of Ellis and now of Devin with a maple tap to the throat, but these are both human on human killings. So as far as we can tell. So yeah, these are werewolves within. Um, Finn and Cecily are back at the inn when Sam comes in with his NVGs and his crossbow, and they sneak out and go under the porch where Joaquin is hiding too. And he's not a good person to hide with because he gets very loud.
Mhm.
They've also been upstairs sneaking around. They found the diesel soaked knife. This is where
Right.
Finn becomes a potential werewolf because he is they're finding like news clippings of murders in these places where he said he's come from. Grout Lake,
Pond,
Grout
Bradley.
Pond, and
One of those.
another place that where apparently
Yeah,
everywhere
another
he's
place.
been there have been attacks or murders. And so you have shots of Cecily looking at this and then a shot of Sam Richardson looking quite menacing with a knife in his hand.
So that's interesting, right? That scene is specifically when when she's reading the press clippings and he's holding the knife in it's in Sam Parker's room, I believe, at that point. Why is if there's only two of them there, why
And
is
Janine,
she trying to sell him on the fact that he's a werewolf?
she's trying to sell him on the fact that he's a werewolf.
Well,
What is
she's
she?
like she's the one she's putting these pieces together,
Yeah.
and at this, so
Is it out loud or
again,
is it just like she's doing the
when you
math in
get to
her
the end of
head?
the movie, well, it's like why did she? If there were other people in the room, there was one more person, and she was trying to point the finger at Sam, I would totally, excuse me, at Finn, I would totally get it. But the fact that it's just the two of them in the room, and she is like having this aha moment while she looks at this news story,
Yeah.
does that
I
make
mean,
any sense?
it doesn't really, given the fact that she is the werewolf. Spoiler alert. Well,
Sorry, I know, but
what is she? Yeah, what is she possibly thinking about with this? Other than just being able to like psychologically being able to throw him off for a second later on, but that doesn't come up until later. Because then Sam breaks into the house and then they run away and meet up with Joaquin and they go looking for Devin. They think that Devin has probably gone to Trish and Pete's house. Pete's dead. No,
yep.
Pete dies at home. Yeah, Pete dies at home. And that's when Trish runs off into the woods to start murdering people. They go into Trisha and Pete's house, and inside they find Marcus.
Hmm.
And what's he doing?
Marcus he's first of all, he's looting the joint. He's there to steal, but he's added a little. He's added himself a Freddy Krueger glove, not even a Freddy Krueger glove. He's taped kitchen knives to his hand,
Yeah.
and he's using the werewolf scare as the smoke screen for his looting, which I just thought was absolutely hilarious. But the way he's selling the Freddy Krueger glove, like he describes how he made it. He's like menacing them with it, but you can just see like it's not quite working well. I don't know. His character was thoroughly enjoyable.
It, it
So
was
yeah.
it was pretty predictable that he was going to die in a stupid way, but I was convinced that he was going to stab himself with his own knife glove.
Oh my
But
gosh. Yeah. Yeah,
Like I'm not sure what his plan was here because he explains his whole plan to Cecily and Finn, but then he's just like leaving, right? They're running after him. I
right.
forget exactly how this scene plays out, but they're running after him into the street. He's talking trash back to them when Gwen reverses and runs him over, and then yells at Cecily and Finn like, "Come on, Marcus, hurry up, get in the car."
Yeah,
And she dies within an instant because Trisha walks up with her purse gun and shoots her in the head. So we've Gwen and Marcus off the board.
yeah. It's a shame. They were in a kind of nonsensical and silly movie. They were on the far end of nonsensical and
They
silliness, so
were.
they were fun characters.
Well, I
Rip
mean, and
Gwen.
when that happens, Cecily just says, "Man, this town is full of insane. Like this town is
Yeah,
completely
right,
crazy."
right.
And still, this is like the fourth murder or death that we've seen that was not werewolf uh, delivered anyway. And we're not done yet because now Sam shows up and there's kind of an awkward standoff. I think here potentially is where there's some exposition and pointing of fingers as to Finn being the werewolf.
Right. This is where Sam very explicitly he's been tracking him. And he explains he's not just your friendly neighborhood natural gas magnet. He's also a werewolf hunter, and that he's been tracking Sam now for X period of time. I don't remember which. Don't remember how long.
Yeah. There's some grabbing of different characters, and then there is the explosion of the phallic gas statue, which I believe kills Sam. Cecily does that shooting. That might be the second person she
Wait, no, oh wait,
kills.
hold up.
What?
Joaquin, I thought
Oh
Joaquin
yeah,
shot the gas thing
Joaquin was there. Yeah, you're
with the
right. He
purse
was.
gun. He's got the purse gun now. He's been shot by he's dying from a crossbow bolt. And so
Yeah.
his disdain for Sam comes full bore. Yeah, he shoots the gas penis.
But they were also all being held at gunpoint by Trisha. Joaquim hits her with a poker and she falls face first into the fireplace. And so there was actually another murder there that I'd forgotten
Wow.
about.
So many murders.
So many murders. And then outside there's Sam. And Joaquim gets shot because oh yeah. Joaquim is also trying to kill Cecily because she's the seventh born. Little did we know that she actually was the seventh born vampire or vampire werewolf. I didn't think about that until just now.
Wait, so he actually he believes that she is the werewolf?
Yeah, he's
Huh.
holding her hostage for being the seventh born, and then Sam shoots him with a crossbow
Right. Okay. Huh. Wow.
because Finn has casually let it drop that she was the seventh child, and I don't remember that being was that something they talked about in the arcade
I'm assuming it would be at the beginning, yeah.
or maybe in their snowy walk to
Or one
Flint's
of their
house.
walks, yeah. One of their lovely walks up to Finn's cabin or Emerson's cabin, sorry.
So they blow up Sam. Sam is exploded. Cecily and Finn. Finn's been stabbed
He has.
by Sam.
Yeah, he was fat. Yeah, they were rolling around. He tackled him, smother tackled him, and Sam pulled a knife and I don't think he stabbed him or did he just like away, whatever. He's been cut.
He
He's bleeding
he's bleeding. He's not
from the
great.
lower torso.
They go into the Axe place, the arcade, and so a smarter man than me might think now's when the axes are going to come into play, and eventually they do. But I still like this kind of caught me by surprise. I was just thinking like, yeah, all these people were just crazy. There's no werewolf in this movie. I was still kind of there because every time they thought they had a werewolf, it turned out not to be the case so far. But
Hmm.
then Finn gets summoned by the wolf whistle phone. I don't know who's texting this guy too. He's been dead for a couple of days. Into this room where you find the fuel injector in the box. You find the fact that Dave was a postal worker and his ID is there.
Right.
Uh, and so Finn is very quickly coming to the conclusion that Cecily is not what she has been saying. This is so now we're all on the same page. Cecily is standing. in a weird kind of menacing way out in the main room, and then proceeds to just kind of really take Finn down for his whole his whole personality, which is
Just belittles him. Really,
yeah.
really mean. I mean, just so mean. I it was a very I don't know if this is like intentional. They're like, oh, we got all these things we need to tie up here. Let's just have it all happen in one 3 minute bit
Yeah.
and then get to the final fight scene. But yeah, no, she was horrid to him. And it was all the things, it's like he hasn't grown at all. All the things he was working on listening to his podcast on the drive up there. And hard to believe that he's made no progress in 48 hours. I really don't feel like he was committed to his therapy. That would be my
He
guess.
he says it's okay to be a nice guy, and then he throws some
Yes.
X's at her. I feel like he really makes a lot of progress on himself.
There's some, he definitely develops as a man, as a person when he's forced to defend himself. So yeah,
But he's still not going to be able to beat her. But luckily, Emerson Flint comes in. I don't know. I forget what he does to her. He hits her with a
he hits
shovel.
her with a shovel,
Yeah, which we
which is
should
a weird.
know. What?
I was gonna say,
Like
like,
as a trapper, why would he have a shovel? Yeah.
yeah, he's the great hunter trapper Emerson Flint. Why does he not have his shotgun? Why does he not have I don't know, like something a bit more that as we find out, it only is so good for so long. So,
We'd also discovered in the last scene that he'd never heard of Mr. Rogers when Finn, not the last scene that he was in. Finn was telling him to come and help out because he could be a good neighbor like Mr. Rogers, and his response was who? But then he comes back to town because what Finn said really resonated with him. So this is also part of our arc for Finn being a nice guy and encouraging other people to be nice guys. It's a winning combination, and you could get through to a cold-hearted killer like Emerson Flint. Um, but it's so predictable that they're having this like moment of, and it happens twice in the end of this film. They're having this moment of like, oh, you know what? Thanks for coming. You know what? No problem. I was really thought about a lot what you said in the background. We know that the werewolf is getting up. Ace of Base comes back on, or at least it's
I
playing,
suppose.
and eventually, there's also been a running gag about snowshoes. Finn really thinks that they're great, and every time he mentions them, Cecily is like, "What do you keep talking about snowshoes for?" I'm with him. I think snowshoes are great, and in this kind of environment, I would want to have some too. It turns out he
Hmm.
does have one, and he's able to stab her in the neck with one.
And then
So
her eyes turn black,
we think
and then she.
that might have been it. Oh yeah, what do you think of the werewolf makeup?
I thought they did a fine job with it. It was, I think I like that they didn't oversell it, the morph, right? I feel like there could be a real temptation to go too hard on that. But now I think at this point we've established what this movie is and what it isn't, and so I think they were. It was a nice soft touch with the morph and the fact that she remained bipedal as opposed to being on all fours, not going full wolf.
Sure.
I think it was nice. Yeah, it was good.
It's a little silly here where she is reanimated after being hit with a shovel and thrown Flint into a wall. He's down for the count.
Hmm.
Finn is hiding before he manages to stab her with the snowshoe. And she's just kind of walking around and sniffing things and knocking things over. Like she has completely lost track of where he is in this room, which I thought
Yeah,
was a little bit silly. If you're gonna,
not totally realistic. Werewolves have great senses of smell. We all know this.
everybody, it is known. But also he didn't really move very far from where he had been standing when this that last thing happened. So I feel like she could have just walked to where he was because he's hiding very close to there.
Yeah,
And she's like walking back and forth across the same part of the store. It's a small knit, but that's me.
it's your
Uh,
one.
they once again manage to. Oh yeah, he snowshoe kills her. Then they're having another conversation about going to get sandwiches at the Beaverfield Inn. Yeah, Janine can make us a sandwich. And then they're laughing. Of course, the werewolf has gotten up again and is jumping to kill them when Janine shows up and shoots it with her husband's. No, no, not her husband's hunting rifle. The werewolf hunter's crossbow, which probably has a silver bolt,
No,
which is what's going to do the job.
one can only assume.
Because the snowshoe to the neck certainly didn't do it. Neither did the shovel to the head. Um, putting down the werewolf and ending with a weird sort of Sam Richardson's about to say something face shot before we fade to black. Roll credits.
And scene.
We haven't done this movie enough justice in just how many jokes there are and how often they are being delivered. Even in these tense moments with the werewolf, Milana is just like, eviscerating him, but it's funny at the same time. And Finn's defending himself, and that's funny. And everything that's happening is a joke, even during these scenes. Even like Devin getting stabbed in the throat with a maple tap is
Yeah.
it's humorous.
I was reading a lot of the reviews. I read a lot of the read some reviews of this, and one of the ones that I thought really stuck out to me was no one was like 100% this was the greatest movie ever made, but there was somebody who wrote, one of the first horror comedies that does a really nice job of straddling that line without kind of bending towards one or the other.
Huh.
So I thought that was a really, like to your point, right? There's a lot of humor in this film. The jokes come pretty rapidly, and it does require a little, a rewatch isn't a bad idea, so you can pick up on stuff that you missed. But yeah, it was, yeah, sorry, that was a
Yeah. Well, I'd say it's definitely not a horror film. Certainly not in the traditional sense. Um, I don't understand where the VR or the original game that this came from. I don't really know exactly how that plays out, but it has all the DNA of a whodunit murder mystery. But because of the werewolf thing and the fact that they're kind of leading you to think there is no werewolf for most of the film, the end can still be a little bit surprising. Not a lot, but a little bit like, oh, okay, yeah, there was a werewolf. That's great.
yeah,
So a lot of fun and just hilarious. Just so many jokes, so little time. Um, so I would say run, don't walk to Amazon Prime or wherever you want to watch this and watch it and support lots of good improv actors.
it's true. It is true.
Um, yeah. Any other final thoughts on this one?
Yeah, so it's interesting. This reminded me, and I know you've probably already done this one, is that it reminded me a lot of The Dead Don't Die,
Hmm.
um, which was almost like this on steroids with a different evil, malevolent force, just in terms of the acting, just in terms of the cast and crew for The Dead Don't Die. But yeah, so I was again thoroughly enjoyable. Another review I read of Werewolves Within said, "I came for American Werewolf in London. I left with SpongeBob SquarePants, and I couldn't be happier."
That's not bad.
Yeah,
It's
I mean, I would.
yeah.
This will be one of those ones I feel like when it gets off the when it gets to syndication or it gets into it'll be one of those movies that I watch if it comes on just because there's that moment coming up that I really enjoyed. Um, Probably not going to make an appointment to go out and give it a third full watch anytime soon, unless I get it before my AMC Plus subscription free trial expires at the end of this week, next week.
Well, with your AMC Plus subscription, I'm not going to pitch for them, but Daryl Dixon does come back on, I think today, the 29th.
Yeah, we have. I think I set to record.
Nice. All right. Well,
Set my DVR. It's going to be fine.
you're going to be okay. You're going to be okay.
I'm
You
going
can
to
go back to
survive.
France. Simon, thank you so much for coming on to Reanimated and talking about this film with me in great exhaustive detail. And I appreciate you watched it twice. You loved it so
I
much you
did.
watched it twice.
I did. I did. Stuart, it's been my pleasure. I've really enjoyed this. Like I said, I've been listening to the show for a while, and I have been eagerly waiting for my opportunity to jump in and um, hopefully not get too many people to hit unsubscribe through my inability to be a podcast person successfully.
Oh, I wouldn't worry about that. We've turned off that buttons. It doesn't work actually anywhere.
Noise.
You can't unsubscribe from this. It's there forever. Thank you again. Come back. Let's have you back. We're gonna be talking about Daryl Dixon next time on this show. I don't know if that's something that's of interest to you. But then October is coming up very soon, and there'll be
Mm.
plenty of spooky, creepy things for us to talk about.
That's amazing. Yeah, I would love to come back and love to. Like I said, enjoy listening to you and AJ break the stuff down. And yeah, very excited. Very excited for Daryl Dixon because that character is just super awesome and everybody loves him. So
Everybody does.
yeah, and shout out Mudang.
Shout out who?
Mudang.
Oh, the hippo. Thank you for listening and goodbye.